Ladies and gentlemen, welcome in to yet another installment of my 2024 schedule previews here. This time talking about three different teams: Nebraska, Colorado, and Arizona. Ah, yes, some of these teams moving conferences. Going to be a very different look when it comes to these schedules in 2024. We will begin with Nebraska, who is, of course, staying in the Big Ten. They've got their spring game on April 27th, and then they begin with UTEP. You would figure that's a very winnable game for Nebraska, possibly starting the true freshman five-star Dylan Raiola, top 10 overall player. It is a hard task starting as a quarterback as a true freshman, but they might end up doing it. Then they get Colorado. That is the second half of the home-and-home game there in Nebraska. That is certainly a winnable game. Colorado, it's very hard to know what to expect because of the amount of transfers they always get, the roster turnover, but they are returning Sanders, they are returning Travis Hunter, so they should get at least a little bit of hype going into next year. And then, of course, Deion Sanders, but very winnable game at home for Nebraska. Should be a fun one. Then they get Northern Iowa. Should be a free win there. Illinois at home, very manageable, very winnable game. At Purdue, that's another winnable game. They get Rutgers at home, yet another winnable game. So we're already looking right now, Nebraska, the first 6 games of their schedule. You would love to be 5-1 after these 6 games. I think it's doable. I think it's very doable to be 5-1 after these first 6 matchups. You get your first bye week, then you're at Indiana. That is another winnable game. You're at Ohio State. Nebraska might be going to Ohio State ranked as number 23 or number 24 if they only have one loss. I'm not saying it's going to happen. We'll see how they are with Matt Rule. Again, maybe starting a true freshman, but this is a very early, easy schedule. You're getting Illinois at home, Purdue, Rutgers at home, at Indiana. My goodness. And then you're at Ohio State. That's basically a guaranteed loss. UCLA at home. That's winnable if you're Nebraska. At USC is going to be tough. That's after the second bye week. No, Wisconsin, you get them at home. That's winnable. At Iowa, that is never easy. That is never an easy game on Black Friday to end the season. But Nebraska, I mean, this schedule early on, it's very manageable. It makes me kind of sad that they might start a true freshman QB. And it's not like a true freshman QB can't be good, but it's definitely a learning curve. You would expect a win against UTEP. Colorado is kind of a 50-50, but I would give Nebraska the edge there being at home. Northern Iowa was a free win. Illinois, that's a game you got to win if you're Nebraska and you're trying to be back. You got to win that game. At Purdue, that's another game you got to win, but it's probably 50-50 at this point. Rutgers at home. Rutgers is improving. And then you get that bye week, and then you're at Indiana. So that's another easy game. What an easy start to Nebraska's schedule, and we'll see if they can take advantage of that, maybe get some hype, but that is just their 2024 schedule. Moving on to Colorado, Deion Sanders, Shedeur Sanders, and Travis Hunter. They will begin versus North Dakota State. Wow. So the powerhouse FCS team, who's kind of taken a back seat the past few years to South Dakota State, who is the rising mega power of FCS. That's a dicey game if you are Colorado. North Dakota State's a hard team. They're very good every year. And then after that, you're at Nebraska and then at Colorado State. So was that a home and home with Colorado State they had? Because we remember the crazy game, the 10 o'clock start time. What was it, week 3? Double overtime. Colorado beat Colorado State 43-35. Those 3 games are kind of annoying. And then if you look at the far left, the Big 12 has not released their actual schedules to where the dates are done. So that's why it's to be announced. So none of these are in order. Just keep that in mind. But that non-conference schedule is dicey. That's kind of a feisty North Dakota State FCS team at home. And it's the first game of the year. At Nebraska's not easy. At Colorado State. Colorado State's not very good, but it's like that rivalry thing. You barely won this past year. That could be an annoying non-conference schedule for Colorado. And then just taking a look at these games, once again, they are in random order. At Arizona. So originally it looked like that game was going to be very challenging. Now we don't know. The Arizona's future's kind of up in the air with the coaching situation. They lose their head coach, Noah Fafita, the young superstar quarterback. Could he possibly leave in this 30-day window where players are allowed to leave after their head coaches, leave themselves? I don't know how good Arizona's going to be next year. That could be a winnable game for Colorado. Utah is going to be very good, but Colorado gets them at home. Colorado gets Baylor at home, Oklahoma State, Kansas State. That's another team that should be pretty good. Cincinnati travels to Colorado. And wow, they've got a lot of home games and then 3 away games at Kansas. Kansas will be interesting next year. They're building something there. At Texas Tech, that's winnable. At UCF. Let me just, the Big 12 is going to be such a mosh pit. Like, I can't even analyze this. The only thing I can say, this schedule looks like 6-6 to me. It just looks like 6-6. Colorado's going to win some of these games. They're going to lose some of them. You've got, Baylor's a very winnable game. Oklahoma State at home is winnable. Cincinnati at home is winnable. At Texas Tech is winnable. They're winnable games, but Colorado could very easily lose a lot of these games. So Colorado, I think, does have significant upside in 2024 because of their utilization of the transfer portal. They're returning their quarterback. They're returning Travis Hunter. But it's like they're a very up and down team. I would say 6-6, maybe 7-5. They could technically win every game on this schedule, but they could also lose pretty much every game on their schedule. It's one of those type of things with the Big 12. It's going to cannibalize itself. So moving on to Arizona now, and this is going to be very hard for me to even predict because, again, we don't know what's going on with Arizona. They lost their head coach. Will they lose any other players on that roster? It looked like they were building something. If I was doing this schedule preview 2 weeks ago, this would be a lot different because there was talk about Arizona winning the Big 12 because they're joining it next year and possibly, making the playoff, getting even a first-round bye. So they begin with New Mexico. You would figure that should be an easy win. Northern Arizona, another easy win. At Kansas State, that's a tough game. Those are the only 3 games that have dates on them, so traveling to Kansas State, they should be really good. Even with Will Howard leaving, they've got a good young quarterback there. And then looking at their other games, Arizona State at home, very winnable. That's that Arizona versus Arizona State rivalry. Colorado at home is winnable. Texas Tech at home is very winnable. Houston at home. That's a very light home schedule here. West Virginia at home. But this is just the Big 12. Again, none of these teams are great, but none of them are horrible. They're just kind of all in the middle. So it's hard to really even analyze some of these predictions, in terms of at BYU. That's another game that's winnable. At TCU, it's winnable, but they could also lose. At UCF. And then they do travel to Utah. That could be a very tough game for Arizona. Again, the speculation on Arizona right now is very hard based upon their situation, getting a new head coach in there, trying to not let any of those young good players. This is a team that just had a breakout year. They won double-digit games. We will see what happens. They won the Alamo Bowl against Oklahoma. They had a very nice season. And certainly, you look at this schedule, they could win all of these games if they keep this roster together. I don't think they're going to do it because the Big 12... Now, it's not that the Big 12 is a gauntlet, but there's really no let-up. I guess you could argue West Virginia was kind of decent this past year. It's like there's no horrible teams, So you're not going to get a let-up, but you're also not going to face anyone crazy elite. That's just kind of how the conference is after the realignment. Losing Texas and Oklahoma, adding schools, you're losing 2 powerhouses, and you're adding solid teams. It kind of just makes the entire conference, slightly above average in terms of that. But just looking in terms of these 3 schedules, the one that really sticks out to me is Nebraska, specifically their first 6 games. That for the Big Ten Conference, that's a very easy start for Nebraska, to where if they really wanted to start Dylan Raiola, the true freshman, they could get him in and really kind of give him some training wheels early in the season with how easy some of those games are. Of course, Nebraska, they've lost those type of games in the past, like going on the road to Purdue. That's a game that Nebraska typically would lose. But if they've actually turned the corner, you could be looking at like a 6-1 Nebraska team on the road in Columbus, possibly ranked, and their record would be propped up based off of an easy schedule, but still it would be something cool for Nebraska. But either way, guys, that is going to do it for this video. Make sure you're following me on X. Link to that's always in the description.